5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start. May it please the court, we are here today to deliberate on a matter of significant importance concerning a dispute over contractual obligations between two parties engaged in a commercial transaction. The plaintiff contends that the defendant failed to fulfill the terms stipulated in the agreement executed between them, which resulted in substantial financial losses and reputational damage. It is the plaintiff's position that the defendant was negligent in executing the agreed work and further acted in breach of the implied duties owed under the contract. The defendant, however, refutes these claims and asserts that all obligations were discharged in accordance with the contractual terms and that any delays or deficiencies were attributable to circumstances beyond their control, including unforeseen disruptions in the supply chain. The facts as laid out before this court reveal that the plaintiff entered into a contract with the defendant with the expectation that the latter would deliver certain goods within a prescribed time frame and ensure compliance with the quality standards expressly outlined in the agreement. The contract also included provisions for penalties in case of delay or non-conformance. According to the plaintiff, the defendant failed to deliver the goods on time and the products supplied did not meet the contractual specifications, which led to operational setbacks and financial harm. The plaintiff claims that despite repeated notices and requests for rectification, the defendant neglected to take remedial measures. The defendant, on the other hand, maintains that delays were caused by factors such as regulatory changes and disruptions in logistics that were beyond their reasonable control, and that the plaintiff had been duly informed of these issues in a timely manner. Furthermore, the defendant alleges that the plaintiff failed to mitigate damages and exacerbated the situation by refusing to accept partial deliveries that met the agreed standards. Counsel for the plaintiff submits that the evidence clearly establishes a breach of contract, supported by correspondence and expert testimony regarding the quality of the goods delivered. It is submitted that the defendant's failure to adhere to the contract terms constitutes a fundamental breach, entitling the plaintiff to compensation for direct and consequential losses. The plaintiff further argues that the defendant's invocation of force majeure or unforeseen circumstances is untenable as these events could have been anticipated and managed with reasonable care and diligence. The plaintiff urges the court to hold the defendant accountable for all losses arising from the breach and to award damages commensurate with the financial impact suffered. The submission also includes a plea for the court to issue a declaratory order confirming the plaintiff's rights under the contract and injunctive relief to prevent any further breaches. In response, the defendant's counsel contends that the contractual obligations were performed to the best extent possible under the circumstances and that the plaintiff's claims are exaggerated and lack merit. The defense asserts that the unforeseen disruptions were indeed force majeure events as defined by the contract, which absolve the defendant from liability for delays and non-performance during the affected period. It is argued that the plaintiff's refusal to accept partial deliveries was unreasonable and contributed to the prolongation of the dispute. The defendant also challenges the quantum of damages claimed, contending that the plaintiff has failed to substantiate the alleged losses with adequate evidence. Furthermore, the defendant seeks the dismissal of the claim on the grounds of estoppel, contending that the plaintiff had accepted the goods and services in the past without objection, thereby waiving any right to complain later. The defendant prays for the court to reject the plaintiff's claims in their entirety and to award costs in favor of the defendant. This court has carefully examined the submissions and evidence presented by both parties. The primary question before the court is whether the defendant breached the contract and, if so, the extent of liability for damages. The contractual terms are to be interpreted in the light of the parties' intentions and commercial context. The court notes that the defendant did acknowledge certain delays, but attributes these to force majeure events, the applicability of which depends on whether the events were truly unforeseeable and beyond control. The court also considers whether the plaintiff acted reasonably in mitigating damages and whether the defendant's quality assurance processes were in line with industry standards. The documentary evidence, including communication logs, inspection reports, and expert opinions, plays a crucial role in establishing the factual matrix. Both parties have been afforded an opportunity to present witnesses and cross-examine to substantiate their respective positions. Having weighed the evidence and applicable legal principles, the court finds that while some delay was caused by uncontrollable external factors, the defendant failed to provide timely and adequate notice to the plaintiff, as mandated by the contract. The defendant's quality control measures were insufficient, resulting in the delivery of goods that did not conform to the specifications agreed upon. The plaintiff's refusal to accept partial deliveries was justified in light of the significant deficiencies identified. However, the plaintiff is held accountable for certain lapses in mitigating losses, which contributed to the quantum of damages claimed. Accordingly, the court holds the defendant liable for breach of contract and awards damages calculated based on the proven losses directly attributable to the breach. The court further directs both parties to cooperate in finalizing the outstanding deliveries in accordance with revised timelines to minimize further disruption. Costs are awarded in favor of the plaintiff in the interest of justice. Both the parties must communicate effectively, especially when unforeseen difficulties arise, to enable cooperative resolution and prevent escalation of disputes. The ruling also highlights the importance of detailed documentation and adherence to quality standards in commercial transactions. Both parties are encouraged to implement improved monitoring and communication mechanisms to avoid similar conflicts in the future. The court hopes that this decision will serve as a guide for equitable enforcement of contractual rights and duties, fostering trust and reliability in business relationships. This matter is now concluded, subject to compliance with the directives issued herein. Stop.